Welcome to the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, and I've got another video card review for you now, and this is the ITX Compact R9 285 Sapphire graphics card, and this is an overclock edition card as well, so it packs quite the punch for such the small size that it is. Now, last month I did a review on the 280X, and that card was absolutely ginormous in terms of its size and length. It barely fit into my case. I had to take out my hard drive bays. Now, this card is to kind of solve those kind of problems. It's meant to fit into small form factor cases, ITX motherboards, etc. So providing that you can fit in 2 expansion slots on your card to accommodate the heatsink on this card, you should be able to fit this in most cases. Now, as you can see in this footage, the 280X is absolutely ginormous in comparison, and you know, having to remove my hard drive bays last time just to fit the card in left out my hard drives, and it made the case look ugly. Whereas a card like this, you know, you can tidy things up very, very nicely. Or if you're very tight, even tighter on space, you know that there's a powerful card out there that you're going to get really good FPS on, and you don't have to compromise and having to buy a bigger case, which is why I like this card a lot. Okay, just to give you a quick rundown of what's on the card itself. So this is the dual DVI port. It's very flexible, running up to 144Hz monitors. Really great for those competitive gamers amongst us. And then we have the 1.4 HDMI port as well. And this can actually run up to 120Hz monitors. Great for 3D gaming. And if you don't have the dual DVI ports, this will do it for you just as nicely. And then we have the 1.2 mini display ports here. And you can run up to 4 monitors on this thing, or you know, if you daisy chain these up, you can actually run iFinity up to 6 monitors on this card. And if we look here, we have the UEFI button here, so for those faster boot times, faster resume times when loading things up, and also, you know, it has that dual BIOS functionality to it as well. So in case you go a little bit crazy with the overclocking, or you tinker a little bit too much, you can save your card from bricking. Also, you noticed all of this lovely heat piping that's going around on this card, and this is cram packed on this card a lot. Obviously, because it's such a small card that it has to be incredibly efficient at keeping itself nice and cool and energy efficient. And Sapphire specialises that very, very well. We've also got an 8-pin power adapter, not a 6-pin, as this is outputting a little bit more power than you'd expect for such a small card. It can also run up to Crossfire X. So you can have multiple cards running through there, double the power, etc. Also, you've got the true audio feature on this card. So for some games that utilize audio engineering in their games, you can have a really truly immersive experience. And also with AMD Mantle running on this, some games you're going to be able to get increased FPS with as well. Now that I mentioned FPS, let's move on to some of the benchmark results. This is Battlefield 4 running at 1080p on low settings at the moment. We're getting average frames of 134, if not higher on some maps, if not a little bit lower on others, but incredibly smooth throughout, giving me a really enjoyable playable performance, and exactly what a competitive player would need. Scoring above 120 FPS consistently is always a plus in my book. Onto the ultra high settings on Battlefield 4 now, and we're getting an average frame rate of 67 FPS at 1080p, which was smooth in some areas and also a bit choppy in wider open areas. And you know, if you're running the single player campaign on ultra, you can expect about a 15 frame drop as well, because some of the textures and some of the maps on there are very demanding. Some of them aren't so much either as well, so you've got to bear that in mind. Every map is different when it comes to FPS. But 67 frames is still a decent amount. I know a lot of people would be happy to play above 60 on a game like this on ultra high settings. For me, I would always want 120 FPS because I'm just greedy, but still actually outputting a lot of performance on this small card. Now for some FIFA action, so I can do some Mantle benchmarking against DirectX. Now I'm using FIFA, it's a really good demanding game, and of course because it utilizes the Mantle API. There are not many games out there that utilize the Mantle API as of yet, but the list is ever growing, and it's just a nice additional bonus for any sort of Sapphire card that you can, you know, squeeze a little bit more FPS out of your card if your game utilizes the Mantle API. And let's have a look at some of these results, starting up with the high settings for DirectX 11, and we're getting an average frame rate of 52, whereas the Mantle was getting 51. So, you know, DirectX actually came out on top by 1 FPS on this result. But if we turn down the details at the same resolution, which is 1080p, we were getting an average of 71 frames on the low settings on DirectX, whereas Mantle was getting 90 FPS average, 19 extra FPS coming through on the Mantle API. And this I've noticed quite a bit using Mantle, is that, you know, if you lower some of the settings down, it really does skyrocket over those DirectX results. And sometimes, depending on the card, you'll always get a higher FPS running through Mantle. But on this case, Mantle actually lost in the high settings, only by 1 FPS though, so you're not going to really miss 1 FPS. So the Compact 285 here really does pack quite a punch for the size that it's at. It really did surprise me, and you know, it's probably about 20 FPS below the 280X in terms of some of the results I was seeing. So that's fairly impressive for half the size of the 280X, and it's only 20 frames down. It is a tremendous performer for the size that it's at, and you know, if you're one of these people that have a small form factor case, this is definitely the card that you should be reaching for. If you can't fit in a normal size card, it does the job incredibly well. The only downside that I could see from this card was that it generated a slight bit of noise, revving up the fan a little bit, but that's kind of to be expected for a smaller card. And you know, it didn't get necessarily any hotter, it was just making sure that it was pumping out the air a little bit quicker. So you know, just bear that in mind with this card. It gets a little bit loud, but nothing crazy loud. It's not going to go like an aeroplane. It's, you know, it's very, very subtle, and it's the only card that Sapphire have made that I've gone, oh, I actually hear my graphics card warming up a bit. But that's it. And do you know what? That's the price you pay for a small card like this, if you ask me. But still, it's a tremendous card, and it comes in at around £200. You might be able to find it cheaper elsewhere online, but it's definitely a pickup for a LAN box for me that I'm going to be making in the future.